On this Thursday night, Israel's 4-hour pause. The new daily humanitarian window for Gazans trying to get out of harm's way.
We're trying not to harm innocent people.
Yet civilian deaths increase as Israel's siege decimates the territory. The conflict's consequences in Canada.
This is not an anti-Semitic thing, it's a land thing.
The Montreal clash is sparked by the Middle East crisis and the violent threats to schools. Plus, lights, cameras, back in action. The pay raise and new safeguards for actors as Hollywood's historic strike ends. And from protection to expression.
I wanted it to be something that wouldn't necessarily remind me of my time in the military.
The Canadian veterans moving forward by turning their equipment into art.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Farah Nasser.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Israel has begun a daily 4-hour military pause in Gaza. According to the White House, Israel will give a 3-hour warning before the pause to allow people to leave North Gaza to South Gaza along humanitarian corridors and to get more aid to civilians. Despite the renewed diplomatic momentum, the Israeli military stressed its war continues. Israel's prime minister says there will not be a ceasefire until the hostages being held by Hamas are released. More than 10,800 people have died in Gaza. That includes more than 4,000 children, according to the Hamas-run health ministry. 1,400 people in southern Israel were killed on the October 7th attacks. And the IDF says 35 soldiers have been killed since the ground invasion. U.S. President Joe Biden also told reporters today that he had asked the Israelis for a pause longer than 3 days during negotiations over the release of some hostages. UN officials are cautioning the conflict in Gaza could expand, with its aid chief warning that allowing the situation there to continue would be a travesty. Mike Armstrong has our top story from Jerusalem, and before that, a warning. Some of the details in it may be disturbing.
It is a road that dates back basically as long as recorded history. It was used by the ancient Egyptians and the armies of Alexander the Great and Napoleon. Well, the latest chapter in the story of Salah al-Din Road is refugees using it to move south. For the 5th day, the Israeli Defense Forces opened a corridor through the land in Gaza they now control. The window Thursday opened from 10 a.m. for 6 hours. According to U.S. officials, Israel has also agreed to open a second corridor along a coastal road. Bombs have been dropped from one end of the Gaza Strip to the other, but the bulk of them in the north. The IDF says about 50,000 people a day have listened to the warnings and left. That isn't easy. This man says he tried to move south, but was with a group that came under fire from an Israeli tank. Now, the IDF took several foreign journalists into Gaza Wednesday. These are images from what was a 90-minute tour. To participate, the Reuters crew that took them had to agree to allow the Israeli army to review its material. That crew says everything it shot was approved. In the images, the IDF shows off what it says are 2 floors of workshops used to make weapons located in a residential building.
October 7th came from here. Came from houses like this.
In the south, a region that may be safer, but certainly not safe. And those who have moved there struggle for shelter, medicine, food, and water. Now, Israel has reached a deal with the UN, the US, and Egypt on aid. Trucks are scanned and inspected before they're allowed in. The goal, according to the US, is to get to a minimum of 150 trucks per day.
If we will see that Hamas will use the humanitarian aid that comes from Nitzana through Rafah, we will stop it.
There was movement at the border in the other direction Thursday. Foreign citizens were again allowed to leave for Egypt, including 32 Canadians. This woman says she suffered through weeks of humiliation and feels as though the world doesn't care about the cries and pain of Palestinians.
نعلن استعدادنا.
Now, this is video released Thursday by a group holding some of the Israeli hostages taken October 7th. A spokesman for the Al-Quds Brigade says it's ready to release a woman because she needs medical attention and a teenage boy because of his age. It says it will let them go when the security situation on the ground allows it. The Israeli military is calling the video psychological warfare and says it shows the group that released it is under pressure and in distress. There may also be movement with some of the hostages being held by Hamas. Several political leaders from that group are based in Qatar, and there are reports both the CIA and Israeli intelligence are in that country for talks with Qatari mediators. One of the things being discussed would be the release of 10 to 15 hostages in exchange for a 1 or 2 day humanitarian pause in fighting. Farah?
Mike Armstrong in Jerusalem for us tonight. Thank you, Mike. 18 people were killed and at least 20 others were injured in raids by Israeli forces on the Jenin refugee camp in the West Bank. This is according to Palestinian health authorities. Israel's military says it was conducting counter-terrorism raids, but it gave no further details. Local officials say at least 178 Palestinians have been killed in the West Bank since the October 7th attacks on southern Israel. The latest raid is the deadliest since Israel's war began. And that war has the U.S. on high alert in the Middle East for activity by Iran-backed groups. Washington says it carried out airstrikes in eastern Syria yesterday against a weapons warehouse used by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. It is the second time in less than 2 weeks the U.S. has hit facilities in Syria in response to attacks by Iranian proxies on U.S. forces in Iraq and in Syria. An unmanned American drone was also shot off the coast of Yemen by Iran-backed Houthi forces. The group released this video, and they say it shows the drone being shot down by a surface-to-air weapon. There's concern in Montreal over a rise in violent incidents connected to the Israel-Hamas war. Yesterday, 3 people were injured and 1 person was arrested after an altercation at Concordia University. And overnight, police say 2 Jewish schools were hit by gunshots. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau condemned the 2 incidents, saying there's no place for hate in Canada.
Our diversity includes diversity of perspectives and opinions, but not to hate, not to lash out with threats of violence or actual violence against someone you disagree with.
Phil Carpenter now on what happened and how the city's reacting.
Montreal police spent much of Thursday at 2 Jewish schools in Montreal after responding to 911 calls about bullet holes found on the front entrances of the buildings in the city's Côte-des-Neiges district.
The first one, a call that was made at around 8:20 for an impact that was found by someone from the school.
The bullet hole is in one of the main doors of the United Talmud Torah Elementary School. Just 3 kilometers away, a bullet hole was also found in the door frame at the Yeshiva Gedola of Montreal.
First information that were gathered on those 2 events, gunshots were fired during the night, so there was no one in the school, luckily, so no one was injured.
Up until late afternoon Thursday, police say there were no suspects, no arrests. This incident has sparked fear that tensions between supporters of Palestine and Israel are rising in the city as the Israel-Hamas conflict intensifies. Montreal police say there has been an increase in the number of hate incidents targeting both Jewish and Muslim communities.
People are asking questions. Where is this going to lead?
Thursday's shootings follow an altercation Wednesday afternoon at Concordia University between 2 groups that led to 1 arrest. According to the university, swastikas were also found. The university denounced what happened in a letter to the school community, saying both Jewish and Muslim members of our community have reported provocative comments in sensitive or hostile social media posts and expressed fear. In Côte-des-Neiges Thursday, Jewish groups expressed concern about their safety.
We've gone from insults to harassment to violent harassment to actual violence.
Police say it's too soon to know if the shootings were sparked by the tensions. Still, community leaders are calling for calm.
We want to protect everyone in this borough. We want to make sure that we live in peace. We are the most diverse borough of the city.
Police say they have stepped up patrols in the areas. Phil Carpenter, Global News, Montreal.
A major change to Canada's Labour Code was announced today that will affect almost 1 million federally regulated workers. The Liberal government tabled legislation banning employers from hiring replacement workers during strikes. Now, this was a core demand of the New Democrats and their agreement to support the minority Liberals. Taria Isri reports.
This has been a year of Labour strife. The most recent in Metro Vancouver, where Rogers Communications locked out 300 unionized technicians. But new protections on the picket line are coming.
Today is indeed a historic day for workers right across this country.
Labour Minister Seamus O'Regan introduced legislation banning employers from hiring replacement workers during lockouts and strikes in industries like transportation, banking, and telecommunications. Employers who break the rules will face fines of up to $100,000 a day. While the Liberals made the announcement, this was really a win for the NDP.
They would have never tabled this legislation but for the fact that New Democrats and Labour together fought to make this happen.
The New Democrats have tried to make this happen over the past 15 years. Their attempts were voted down by both the Conservatives and Liberals. The difference this time, the legislation was a key demand in the NDP Supply and Confidence Agreement needed to keep the Liberals in power.
It was messy and difficult. What we've done here, I believe, is done something that's so important to our economy right now, and that is provide more certainty and more stability.
The Canadian Chamber of Commerce warns it will have the opposite effect.
What they will do is to encourage more labor disruptions and longer strikes as a result.
Similar anti-scab laws already exist in British Columbia and Quebec.
This legislation is for those generations of workers who have courageously stood on a picket line in Canada. You have a piece of this victory.
But it won't be an immediate victory. Once the legislation passes, it will take at least 18 months before the anti-scab laws come into effect. That's how long the tribunal that deals with complaints says it will need to get ready for the changes. Taria Isri, Global News, Ottawa.
The federal government's fall economic statement will be presented later this month, and it's expected to focus on housing and affordability. Today, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced $900 million over 4 years to accelerate housing construction in Quebec. Now, it's money the province will match to help create tens of thousands of new homes. But as Mackenzie Gray reports, other provinces aren't happy.
It's the largest investment yet from the Liberals' signature housing fund.
When we put forward $900 million as Quebec's share of the housing accelerator, the province of Quebec said, okay, we're going to step up and double it.
The combined $1.8 billion will build more than 23,000 homes across Quebec, 8,000 of which will be affordable units.
I'm very happy to be able to have this agreement.
To get that money, François Legault had to agree to speed up the permitting process and require increased density. But Quebec is the only province to get housing cash from Trudeau. In the rest of Canada, the Liberals have cut deals directly with cities, leaving other premiers peeved.
You can't have the federal government going into a certain town or a certain city and dumping funding and not even discussing it with the province. That's unacceptable.
What about other provinces, Justin?
The Prime Minister defending the asymmetrical approach.
If people say, we want to be working as closely as the government of Quebec is with the government of Canada, come on, we're happy to do that.
Need to be focused on.
Regardless of who gets the money, homelessness experts want less jurisdictional squabbling and more building.
It doesn't really matter to us, but we need all three levels of government working together.
It will be at least 2 years before any of the Quebec units are built, but in that time, the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation says 45% of Canadian mortgage holders will renew at a higher rate, costing an additional $15 billion annually. Farah?
Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa. Thanks, Mackenzie. The show will go on. Coming up, Hollywood actors wrap up an historic strike. Thousands of passengers faced major delays at Canada's largest airport today after an apparent mistake by a worker on the ground. Toronto's Pearson Airport says the disruption was caused after a ground handler contracted by an airline directed domestic passengers to an area meant for screened U.S.-bound passengers. Several flights were delayed over a 2-hour period. One of the longest actors' strikes in Hollywood history appears to be coming to an end. The Actors Union has agreed to a tentative deal with the group representing studios and streaming services. After months on the picket line, for many, it's the fairy tale ending they were hoping for. But as Jackson Prosco explains, it may not be back to business as usual.
Union power! Union power!
This reaction was no performance.
Oh my God, we did it!
Thousands of Hollywood actors found out their 118-day-long strike is over. They can get back to work immediately.
I think we've all been waiting for this to happen for a long time.
The lengthy labor dispute ended with an agreement to pay actors more and protect their jobs from future technology like AI. The big studios call it a new paradigm that includes the largest minimum wage increase in 4 decades.
The overall valuation of these contract gains is over $1 billion during the term of this contract. That's by far the largest set of gains we've ever achieved in a contract negotiation.
In Hollywood North, it's a huge relief. Thousands of workers were sidelined as production of American shows stopped.
Hopefully this means a swift return to production and shows coming back up here and people getting back to work.
For all their big wins, actors are returning to work in a rapidly changing industry.
It is probably the case. Better paying jobs, somewhat more secure jobs, but fewer of them. Spending on content is going to be slashed. The legacy companies are not all going to survive.
But the show must go on. The big studios are planning to turn the lights back on as soon as possible. They face pressure from audiences and broadcasters to crank out new content quickly.
There's going to be a logjam. Everybody is going to be fighting over these actors because we've got 6-8 months of productions that all want to shoot at the same time.
After 4 months on the picket line, labor peace may not last. The powerful union representing film and TV crews will see its contracts expire next summer, potentially stealing the show once again. Jackson Prosco, Global News, Washington.
Fast car, Tracy Chapman.
A historic win at this year's Country Music Awards as Tracy Chapman becomes the first Black songwriter to win the CMA Song of the Year. Fast Car was first released in 1988, but it resurged in popularity after country artist Luke Combs recorded a cover this year. Chapman says, "It's truly an honor for my song to be newly recognized after 35 years." Still ahead, the thick foam covering sections of a sacred Indian river. A toxic white foam has formed over sections of New Delhi's Yamuna River as the Indian capital battles hazardous pollution. Officials say it's caused by sewage and industrial waste. The city has been blanketed by smog for a week. Officials have shut down schools, stopped construction, and imposed restrictions on using vehicles to help improve air quality. There's now a proposal to create rain through cloud seeding technology later this month. A new report says the past 12 months have been the Earth's hottest stretch on record. According to Climate Central, a nonprofit science research group, our planet's average temperature was 1.32 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels from November of 2022 to this past October. And 90% of the world's population experienced at least 10 days of abnormal temperatures, which were very strongly affected by climate change. According to the report, scientists also believe that 2023 will be the Earth's hottest year on record with near certainty.
Just bring it up.
Molding new futures next. The Pottery Project helping veterans rekindle their creativity. For many veterans, making the transition out of service and into civilian life can be challenging and sometimes even isolating. A Nova Scotia artist is bringing them into her pottery studio to connect them with their own creativity. And as Heidi Prochacek reports, it's in a way that also honors their service.
So that's just bringing it up, right?
Molding clay into something new takes on a deeper meaning for veterans at Lynette Peters' Pottery Studio.
I have such a love and a respect for veterans and for what they've done for us.
Her husband served in Afghanistan. After he was released from that service, the COVID-19 pandemic shut down the world. So Peters came up with a project using decommissioned military helmets to help veterans.
The helmets are a cradle for something different. They are so much more, and they can have so many purposes and so many different things that they can fulfill within their lifetime.
I used the earpiece or the ear cup to form this piece here in the bowl.
Former helicopter pilot Ilona Inman used an aviation helmet for her piece.
I chose not to make the piece shaped like the helmet because I wanted it to be something that was representative in an abstract sense that wouldn't necessarily remind me of my time in the military because I'm not there anymore.
Glaze it all and then just wait till it gets fired.
Everyone makes something different. Navy veteran Chris Hamilton's piece is reminiscent of the real thing.
It just brings back a lot of memories from my service and what this whole project kind of brings home for me. Biggest memory is sailing with a guy and him finding out we were on watch when he found out his brother had been killed in Afghanistan. So that was pretty emotional.
Peters offers up her studio and skills at no cost and wants to inspire others to see veterans differently.
How can we include veterans? How can we use our own skill sets to include them and invite them along and help them feel like they belong? That is, I think, our civic duty.
Peters has already worked with more than 24 veterans, transforming helmets like this into pieces of art like this. She has no plans on stopping and hopes to hold a public art exhibit someday.
The project has a lasting impact on its participants.
As you're rolling it out, making your bit there, your memories are kind of going into it.
Capturing memories and molding new futures in clay. Heidi Petracek, Global News, East Lawrencetown, Nova Scotia.
And that's Global National for this Thursday night. I'm Farah Nasser. Tonight's Your Canada is the Field of Crosses in Calgary. Until tomorrow, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Good night.